Good Saturday, everybody. Gene Daddy here again. And, there has just been so much going on in the news over the last month in society in general, not just based on politics, but in society, particularly surrounding the death of George Floyd. As I said, I guess it's been almost a month now, which I said, of course, has been based on a false premise. The false premise of racism and targeting of black people is just a lie, because so far as we know, the officers involved haven't even been interviewed, so nobody even knows what their motivation was, whether it was racially motivated or anything. And again, as we know, since all the video has come out, George Floyd was on drugs. He did resist arrest initially, and he was in the process of trying to pass off a counterfeit $20 bill. So with that being said, we have all of this rioting and looting and burning and violence and tyranny, destruction of property, and even death. We've had a few black people who have been killed but have received no type of accolades in the news. David Dorn, the retired police chief in St. Louis, Underwood, was that his name? The federal agent who was also killed, and a few other black police officers who were killed with no type of outrage from Black Lives Matter or any black people, as it were, except for the people that went to the funeral of David Dorn, which received a small amount of coverage from the local news there in St. Louis. Now, all of this falsely based motivation and destruction has now devolved, has progressed, and moved on and metastasized, I guess the word is, to destruction of monuments. And this has to relate to something which I'm going to talk about shortly after that. It has devolved into the defacing, toppling of monuments. Previously, it was Confederate monuments, and now it just has gone on to generally any white person that can be found on a map anywhere. If you can find a white monument, they're going to tear it down. And what that has to do with is Marxism, which let me not get ahead of myself there, but let me talk about how people have been proclaimed as peaceful protests, not only by the president, but by the media, of course. It has been said much that, these folks have the right to peacefully protest, which is true. Our First Amendment must be defended without a doubt at all costs. The First Amendment is important. But I would say that these quote unquote peaceful protests have no legitimacy, being that they are based on a false premise. They have no legitimacy. The basis for what they are doing is false, as I said before, because this is I suppose the word is straw man. The argument that they're talking about, this racism and police brutality against which they are protesting, is a lie, essentially. So they are protesting air. They're not protesting anything that is real, tangible, or legitimate. As I have said in past videos, I'm not going to go through all that whole explanation again, but the stats bear it out. Reality bears it out. Chicago bears it out, So you can go and look that up yourself. So I'm not going to get into that in any detail right now. Now, all of these situations where these things happen are Democrat-run cities, okay? That's where they're happening. Seattle, Freattle, Chicago, New York City, where 34th Street was demolished. And Bill de Blasio, was actually, cheering these folks on, cheering on his daughter, who was arrested as a protester. He was saying how proud he was of her. These are Democrat-run cities, Atlanta, St. Louis, wherever these bastions of destruction are wantonly happening and being cheered on by the Democrats. Now, what does that have to do with Marxism that I mentioned earlier? Marxism has been the declared mantra, ideology, and philosophy of both BLM and Antifa. One of the leaders of BLM has gone in an interview and has openly declared that they follow Marxist ideology. You know, all you have to do is look back at Mao, what Mao did and in his revolution, how they destroyed property, how they wanted to redistribute property taking it from people who developed it and distribute it to people who were essentially bums and did nothing to contribute to that development at all. You know, Stalin in Russia with the amount of people, of his own people that he killed. You know, North Korea, Vietnam under Pol Pot. They all have a centralized view of government. You know, they had politburos, which was a centralized government, and the government organizations themselves chose from within their own ranks for their leaders. You know, Khrushchev in Russia, Brezhnev, Andropov, Gorbachev, you know, in Russia, you know. So that is how they operate. Now, they also, as we have seen, because the point of a lot of this is that their actions are speaking louder than their words. They can say whatever they want. They can say that, oh, you know, we want equality, we want to defund the police, we want, you know, safer policing, we want this, we want that, we want the other thing. But their actions speak louder than their words. And their actions are that they wish to rule with an iron fist. All right? That is what is manifesting. That is the proof. The proof is in the pudding. Okay? And I'm going to get to that in just a second. Now, these things are related. The Democrat-run cities, the Marxist philosophies, the ruling by a fist, they are related because of the fact that BLM and Antifa are the military wing. They are showing themselves to be the militaristic wing, the enforcement agencies of the Democrat Party. Okay? Now, how did I arrive at that conclusion? Well, you can see it because just like when the IRA is related to Sinn Féin in Ireland, right? When Ireland was seeking independence from England, the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, came out, and they were the militaristic enforcement wing of Sinn Féin. And Sinn Féin was the political voice of Ireland that had wanted to gain independence from England, and the IRA was the enforcer. They took military actions against the British Army that was in occupation, more or less, in Northern Ireland and throughout England. Northern Ireland is the last bastion. I remember as a kid in the 70s seeing on the news combat in the streets of Northern Ireland between IRA combatants and the British Army that was there. So BLM and Antifa can by default be declared as the militaristic wing of the Democratic Party at this time, because when you look at Bill de Blasio, when you look at Mayor Durkin, their philosophies, their mindset, and especially freaking AOC, their philosophies and their mindset, that's what their mindset is. Socialism, communism, that's what they want. You know, when Bill de Blasio talks about defunding the police, is he talking about giving that money back to the taxpayers? No, he's talking about diverting those funds into other programs. Socialism, redistribution of other people's money is what he wants to do with that. So how is this happening? How is this taking such a foothold in society? Well, I'm glad you asked, because this is a damn good question, because it is, once again, it is the media. The media is the information ministry of the Democratic Party. The Democrat Party is the Politburo. The organizations of BLM and Antifa are the military wing, and the Ministry of Information is the mass media. Okay, the mass media is the one that are calling these folks protesters. They are still labeling them, trying to separate them out as peaceful protesters. Right? They don't call call out the rioters and the looters. You know, they're all protesters. You know, a general term of protesters. The mainstream media are actively complicit. They are actively engaged, and as the president said, as he called it back in the summer of 2018, they are the enemy of the people, without a doubt. The media is the enemy of the people because they are waging war. They are waging psychological war against the United States and the people of the United States because they are actively running, what is the term they use? They're running, they're front running, or whatever the word is. They're running coverage for these leftist anarchists and enemies of the state. The media is the enemy of the people. Antifa and BLM are the enemies of the state and the people because as they have shown, which I'm getting to right now, they have shown through their actions, once again, actions speak louder than the words. Their manifestation is Seattle, okay? Whether you want to call it Veganzuela, whether you want to call it the Soviet Union, whether you want to call it Antifa-stan, whether you want to call it Tofu Dishu, whether you want to call it my term, I have two terms that I came up with, Soy Latavia, right? Latvia, Soy Latavia, Las Vegan, right? AKA Chaz and Chop. That is the manifestation. It has shown itself. They have tipped their hand. All right. Their actions speak louder than words. All right. This location, this situation, purely based on contradictions, right? There's nothing but irony in this situation. What's the first thing that they did after they established their foothold there, after the police cowered away out of the East Precinct, which I've talked about in the past, my opinion on the police. The first thing they did, what'd they do? Build a border wall, right? They were against border walls. Walls are racist. You know, this, that, and the other thing. They're against border walls. But what's the first thing they did? They built a wall. I had a good lunch today. They built a wall to keep out whoever they didn't want in. Any uninvited guests were kept out by a wall, right? Then they had armed guards at these walls, right? Defund ICE, defund the police, right? No border guards in the United States are allowed, but they have border guards. They had people, checking IDs as it were, and then within 24 hours, they also had armed, quote unquote, police. Everybody knows him by now. Raz Simone, the warlord, walking around with an AK-47 and a sidearm, handing out AR-14s, that sound like Joe Biden, AR-15s to people who he could not even verify what their age was. He called out, hey, anybody here 18 years old? And he hands the kid an AR-15. The kid didn't even know how to handle it, held it by the clip. And on the first night, they show him beating up people. Police brutality. They're against police brutality, but their own internal organization is going around beating people up. Okay? They got G-checkers walking around, essentially ICE, their version of ICE, walking around checking people, asking them if they belong here, telling people, oh, you have no voice here, you don't belong here. Anyone who was a known conservative, because as I have said, if I didn't say it already, there is plenty of daily information of what was going on inside Chaz/Chop. Plenty of YouTubers were walking around during the daytime and the nighttime showing what was going on. Okay? So there were voluntarily people, going inside, checking what was going on, and there were people checking them, like immigration. Do you belong here? What is your purpose for being here? So another part of the contradiction, there was voluntary segregation. A black-only section of the park, the athletic field that was there, between certain hours, I think 3 to 8 or something like that, or 5 to 8, enforced by goofy behind white people. These dumbass, brainwashed, their brain is like melted wax. These white libtards in there who are enforcing this voluntarily segregating themselves and having this segregated zone. So they're practicing segregation. They're practicing police brutality. They're having armed police. They're having armed, essentially, immigration people checking who's in there, who shouldn't be there, right? Now, this is the whole irony, again, as part of the irony of the whole situation, as the police chief said in a press conference, is that when the shit would hit the fan, rapes and violent encounters that were happening inside there, shootings that were happening, who's the first people they called? They called the police. And what happened, when it came to a head, as it were, when somebody got killed, right, there was a shooting. They apparently, according to down on the street video that happened, there must have been a race riot. Some white people were getting beat up by black people, and virtue signaling white people who felt as though that if they cowered up to these black thugs in there, that somehow they were going to get a pass by that. And it was like, nah, they took advantage of that and were whooping their ass. And apparently, to this day, we still don't know who the shooter was in this case, but two people got shot. One of them was killed. A black person was killed. All right. So we still don't know who the shooter is. And I'm anxious to see who the shooter is, because if it was a white shooter, what are they going to say? Are the black people there going to riot, all right, against, this white oppressor? If a black person was a shooter, are they going to talk about black on black crime? So I really want to know the color of the shooter in this situation, because either way, it's going to be a lose-lose situation, image-wise and philosophically wise for them, because it's going to just continue with their message, their double-speak message of hypocrisy. Now, through their actions speak louder than words. They showed their true colors, right? There was no freedom of thought of opposing ideas. Tyranny is how they run their operation. They are the true fascists. Their actions speak louder than words, okay? So they have tipped their hands and shown their true intentions and destiny of this country, that if they ever get in power, this is how it's going to go. Tyranny, destruction, ruling with an iron fist, Marxism, no free speech, right? You're only allowed to speak if what you have to say is what they are saying, what they want to hear, what they want other people to hear. That is only what is allowed, okay? So in summation, what I feel is that this was a probe. All of these quote-unquote protests were a probe and a test of democracy. They're probing here and there. Where does this work? Where does this not work? Obviously it worked in Seattle. This is a test of democracy, of liberty and freedom, right? So the question is this what you want? Is this what you want in this country? Is this tyranny? Is this what you want? Is this being ruled by an iron fist? Is this what you want? Is having your free speech being taken away? Is this what you want? Is having essentially bullying being the modus operandi of the Politburo, just as we have seen in history? This is why history is important to be taught in schools. And other people have mentioned this. This is why this generation that is doing this have no knowledge of history, which is why they're exalting Marxism, which is why they are the true fascists, and they are exalting fascist behavior. Okay? This is what you get essentially if you were to vote Democrat, because the Democrat Party is not in control, right? As we have seen with the growth of AOC and her popularity. This is who is going to be taking over the Democrat Party. Do not be fooled. If you value freedom, if you value liberty, if you value your rights, oh, and I forgot to mention, with the gun situation, they had armed police, they had armed guards, they're guarding the property. How about the Second Amendment? What about the marches for gun control? All of a sudden, gun control goes right out the window. I forgot to mention that, right? Again, by their actions, they show their hypocrisy. They show what they are truly made of. That they really don't want to take away gun rights. They only want to take away your gun right. They want to take away your ability to defend yourself against them. Just as it has happened in past history, in any communist or socialist country, including Nazi Germany, including Russia, who Germany and Russia were at war against each other, but essentially the Nazi Party and Stalin, the communists, essentially had the same philosophy for the oppression of their own people and taking away of their rights. I dare you to name a socialist country or a communist country where the people have the right to bear arms and defend themselves. I dare you to show me one. So anyway, this video has gone long enough. Actions have shown their true intentions. Actions speak louder than words. If you choose to be a dumbass, go ahead and vote Democrat. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'm Gene Daddy. Like and subscribe and share. That's a new thing that I'm learning, from people on YouTube. They always ask to share. I've been forgetting to ask to share the videos. So like and subscribe. Fight amongst yourself within the comment section mosh pit. I'm Gene Daddy, and I am out.